but no real details. I mean, when are we going to start seeing some details around how National is going to promote growth?
Well, I think we've made it pretty clear in terms of delivering economic growth. It's getting back to those basic fundamentals. So it is reform of the Resource Management Act, making sure we're investing in the infrastructure that we need, ensuring we've got the educational standards, that we're reining in the bureaucracy and red tape, and learning to live actually with more difficult economic conditions. So I think tax cuts will provide stimulus in about 5 months' time for the economy, and that'll be most welcome. But it'll be an overall comprehensive package, and I'm very confident we can get New Zealand growing at a faster rate.
There are others like David Skillings, though, who say we have to be bolder, we have to make some bigger decisions than those fundamental things you're talking about. Do you think today you could have put a bolder vision for change in that area?
Look, I think when you look at those, I've had a brief look through the proposal from David Skilling and Mark Weldon, and there are aspects of those things which are quite complex in nature and what they might mean for New Zealand. Certain things we just wouldn't find acceptable, for instance, like a capital gains tax, and on the commitments card we've made it clear we're not selling assets. So there's certain things that just would be off limits for us, but that's not to say that there aren't some good ideas there. We've been taking some advice around the provisional tax payment idea, for instance. I've got to say there's slightly conflicting views from some of the more senior accounting people about whether that would be a really good idea, but maybe a part of that scheme, for instance, might work. So we're not ruling that out. But I think today, we've got an economic plan. It's a rock-solid economic plan, and that's what we're marketing.
If
campaigning.
The international financial situation became such that intervention was needed, what sort of intervention would your party favour?
Well, monetary policy has always been on a bipartisan basis for the last 20 years. So, on the basis that it happened before we became the government, we'd certainly expect the government of the day and the authorities to involve us. I'm pretty confident that they would. From New Zealand's point of view, because so much of our banking system is controlled and owned offshore, although managed effectively in New Zealand through the responsibility of the Reserve Bank, we would need to work, I think, with the Australian authorities, and if they do move to deposit protection, for instance, that's a step that New Zealand probably would make, I would imagine. So we'll just work with the various parties.
Mr. King, you got quite a response when you talked about ruling out Winston Peters. The poll is starting to close, well, some are at least.
Sure.
Are you worried or are you concerned about ruling out Winston Peters before the election?
No, I'm not. Look, I made it abundantly clear some weeks and months back, and stand by the decision we made. It was the right decision to make. We didn't rule them out on the basis of the SFO. We'd actually done that prior to the SFO launching an investigation. As I said at the time, I wasn't even aware of that. So, look, New Zealanders, it's important they understand up front, what they get, and if they vote for Winston Peters, that may well mean another 3 years of a Labour government, but it won't be a national government.
Are you confident that a move for change is enough to get you across the line? You talked about change about 5 or 6 times in the first 5 minutes.
Well, there's a very strong mood for change. That's what I pick up anecdotally when I'm on the streets. And I think New Zealanders are kind of tired of a government that's been very distracted over the last 3 years. In particular, they came in on a scandal under the pledge card. They left under a scandal of Winston Peters, and along the way they essentially passed the Electoral Finance Act. And I think there is a strong mood for a new government with a fresh approach. But in the end, that'll be put to the test in 27 days' time.
Is there a risk there that people get, if the economy worsens, people get nervous that move for change dissipates somewhat and they think, well, it's best to stick with what we've got at the moment?
Well, I don't think that will be the case, because they're going to look at the economic credentials that I have and Bill English has and compare that with Helen Clark and Michael Cullen, and we're happy, pound for pound, to put ourselves up for comparison. If I become Prime Minister on the 8th of November, I'll be bringing to the job the most probably the strongest CV, if you like, and the strongest economic credentials that a New Zealand Prime Minister has had, I would suggest, certainly for the modern economic times. And I think over the next 2 or 3 years that experience could be vital.
You talk about the economic credentials, but Bill English was Treasurer at the last time we were in a recession, and a lot has been made by your opponents, obviously, about your connection to the international finance markets, which are being pinned for some of the problems we're now facing.
Well, firstly, when Bill English became Treasurer, that was in the latter part of 1998-1999 period. Now, economies go through cycles, and that will certainly happen. But when we left office, growth the year after that was around about 6%, and obviously there's a lag effect. So, Bill English was doing the right things as Treasurer. He's got a wealth of experience, and in the international web that's the financial markets these days, an understanding of what those implications could be for New Zealand, what is likely to be affected, what we might be able to do about it, is crucially important. And we've got a very open financial market, and I think I certainly have a deep understanding of what the implications could be.
Though, do you think your previous record is a help or a hindrance, given what's happened in the United States? Admittedly, you worked in currency trading, and it's all about that mortgage debt. But do you think people might perceive otherwise on the campaign?
Well, I've made it quite clear in the speech. I think it's a huge help.
Bill English is predicting a pretty dirty campaign, he said earlier. I mean, do you share that sentiment?
Well, that seems to be the view coming out of the Labour camp. Saw another secret tape, if you like, from the Sandon secret taper the other day. Look, I think New Zealanders are looking at the facts in front of them at the moment. They're recognising that we've got an economy in recession that will be there for a long period of time if we don't do something about it, an increase in violent crime, a real concern about the productivity of our health service, and about a real concern about those young New Zealanders who are leaving without skills. And when they go into the polling booth on Saturday on the 8th of November, my guess is that they'll be focused on who has the solutions to those issues. And if you look at the campaign openings on Friday night, or with respect that I'm slightly biased, my view was that we offered a solutions-based approach. The Labour government did not.
Sorry, John, just looking at those opening addresses, opening statements, we've had a number of emails and phone calls to our newsroom about whether or not you were wearing a seatbelt and if you were wearing it correctly. I
was, and I was very cautious about that, and I'm sure there'll be lots of external sort of footage that we could provide for you, but yeah, absolutely, there's a seatbelt on at all times.
Is that why Ms. David accused you of stealing its pledge card earlier?
Well, I don't know, but all I know is that I've signed it and we're paying for it ourselves, and we will be including it in our cap.
One of the 11 things is that indexation of benefits.
Yes.
Is that something that's not in place now?
No, it's not in place at the moment. It actually happens as a matter of course effectively every year, but by law it's not required. And when I announced part of our welfare policy, I said that's going to happen, as well as the extension out to $100 that you can earn before there's abatement of your pension or your benefit.
Will we see at any stage on the campaign a breakdown of where National can see streamlines or efficiencies made within the state sector bureaucracy?
We're intending to make some further comments on that, and I think that's actually this week. It's booked in for this week, but notwithstanding any changes that can obviously happen on the campaign trail. But I think it's also important to acknowledge that one of the things in terms of campaigning on fresh leadership and fresh ideas, I think it's very important that new ministers come in and actually have a look at what's going on, do a bit of a stock take, assess what's working and what's not. What I can tell you is the anecdotal feedback I've had from chief executives who come up to me tell me that look, there's quite a bit of waste in the system and there would be room for improvement. Thanks very much, and I'll wish you a good afternoon.
John, in terms of foreign policy, what will be New Zealand's foreign policy under your leadership?
No change. We'll be running an independent foreign policy, making decisions here in New Zealand based on what we think are in the best interests of New Zealanders.